Hey everybody, welcome to Pop Culture Philosophers. I'm Rockin' Robbie Billups, and it's time for the weekly comic book review. That's right everybody, thanks for checking out the video. I am Rockin' Robbie Billups. This is the weekly comic book review. It's the show I read a lot of comic books and I'll let you know what I thought about them, and we always start with the pick of the week, but before we get into that, Merry Christmas! I hope everybody's had a happy holiday season. Christmas time is here and it's about to be gone, but we got some new comics to look forward to, and also Hanukkah's underway right now as we speak, so happy Hanukkah. I hope you've spent this holidays and continue to spend these holidays with those that you love very dearly and who love you just as much. Anyway, usually the week of Christmas, we have like slim pickings for comic books. Not this year. We have a stack of comics to get through, and we always start with the pick of the week, and this week's pick of the week, Absolute Wonder Woman #3. This book has been absolutely impressing me week to week. Actually, I should say month to month, because this book is not weekly, it is in fact monthly. Seriously, Hayden Sherman, Kelly Thompson, they're doing such a fantastic job on this book. Issue 3 is no exception. Now, I know that a lot of people are vibing with Absolute Batman, and I think Absolute Batman's fun. Now, I know that some people are getting into Absolute Superman. Me, I'm still on the fence with that one, but I do believe sincerely that Absolute Wonder Woman is being kind of lost within that shuffle. This is one of the best mainstream superhero books I've been reading for the last 3 months. Hayden Sherman's artwork, I've talked about it before. They are able to shift, change, adapt their style to not just appropriate the tone of the story, but to give each story that they work on its own unique visual vocabulary. Speaking of vocabulary, Kelly Thompson's doing a great job of giving us information through exposition, through flashback, but at the same time, keeping that pace of the story going right on through. The coloring is absolutely freaking spectacular. The composition, the panel design, the layouts, everything about this book absolutely rocks, right? And you got Diana going up against this giant monster. We get more background of her story from coming from hell, being raised by Cersei. It's a Wonder Woman that is very different in origin, but still uniquely Diana. Jordi Belair's coloring is amazing, a perfect complement to this book. I am obsessed with Absolute Wonder Woman. This is one of the best Wonder Woman comics I've ever read. I mean, this is up there already. 3 issues in with the work of George Perez, the work of John Byrne, the work of Brian Azzarello, Cliff Chang. It's that freaking good. The work of Daniel Warren Johnson. These are some of the best Wonder Woman comics out there. Absolute Wonder Woman is no exception. This is a huge week of comics. Lots of #1s, lots of continuing series that are pretty hot. But for me, it doesn't get any better than Absolute Wonder Woman. This is the best mainstream superhero comic I have read in the final 3 months of 2024, and I hope that that pace, that momentum continues on into 2025, and this book right now is showing no signs of slowing down. Also from DC Comics, we got Metamorpho, the Element Man, issue #1. Why do we have a new Metamorpho book? Why? Because Metamorpho's in the new Superman movie. That's why. Metamorpho's in the new Superman movie, so let's have a Metamorpho book that we can get in and out of and have the trade paperback collection ready for when that Superman movie releases in July. And this is written by Al Ewing. Now, Al Ewing is moving over to DC to do some DC stuff, including Absolute Green Lantern. But here is Metamorpho first. This is an interesting book. First of all, Steve Lieber's artwork is absolutely stellar. The artwork is great, and Al Ewing actually does a good job of kind of getting everybody into the know of who Metamorpho is, what Rex's origin story is, what his power sets are, what his world looks like, and at the same time really embracing the Silver Age roots of this character. It definitely comes across silly, it comes across a little dumb at times, but it's doing that on purpose. It's trying to adapt and take on that Silver Age flair of goofiness and just crazy wonkiness, right? And it actually does a pretty good job with it. So I enjoyed this book. I thought it was good. I'm not usually the biggest fan of Al Ewing books, but this one really works for me. It was great art, and I really liked the approach to the story. I like that instead of trying to make it ultra serious and morose like a lot of people try to do when they do a Metamorpho book in the modern era, it's just embracing the goofiness of the character, embracing, I mean, it's not quite out there like a Plastic Man book, but even though that new Plastic Man book that just wrapped up was pretty grounded in some tragic reality too, this is a pretty solid book. I liked it. I'm not going to say that this book is going to turn you into a Metamorpho fan or an Al Ewing fan if you're not already. But if you are fans of those characters and those creators, maybe you want to check it out. I thought it was pretty cool. Then we got Justice League Unlimited issue number 2. I loved Justice League Unlimited number 1. A new era for the Justice League. Pretty much every superhero on the DC universe right now is part of the Justice League. They are super proactive, not just reacting to threats. They have like everything's fine-tuned like machinery right now, right? It's almost like when Jonathan Hickman was doing the Avengers run and they were like coming up with the idea of the Avengers as like a machine. Justice League's kind of doing that, but it involves like everybody, right? So I loved the first issue and I adored the second issue. It continued that momentum. The artwork by Dan Mora is absolutely amazing. The characterizations by Mark Waid, able to kind of balance and juggle all of these different characters. And yeah, there's not like, I mean, there are characters, and what's crazy is that to balance all the characters, where all the characters get their spotlight, but then also to put a focus on a particular character. In this issue, it's Martian Manhunter. You get some really cool stuff with Martian Manhunter, some big revelations about where Jean is right now and what his journey is going to be going forward and how that connects to the Justice League. I loved it story-wise, art-wise, and just event-wise. This felt like fanboy gold right here. This is superhero comics. DC's been killing it. They're one of my favorite publishers of the year. Here is your proof. Justice League Unlimited. Amazing art, a writer who understands these characters, and just a big epic story with so many moving pieces that never feels like it's overstuffed. I love this book. I think you're going to like it too. Plus, we're continuing to deepen the mystery of what happens in the DCU post Darkseid's death. All right, then we got Detective Comics here with 1092. Tom Taylor, Mikhail Hanin, they're just killing this book. They're just killing it. It's awesome. I mean that, like, they're not killing the book as in they're doing a bad job. They're doing a great job. Seriously, Tom Taylor is crafting an interesting Batman story. He's playing with the characters very, very well, especially in this issue, the dynamic and the relationship between Damian and Bruce. But Mikhail's artwork is splendid, including his coloring. The artwork is exciting. The artwork is clean. The artwork is nice. It's an adventurous book. It's an action-packed book. It's filled with mystery and detective work and even a little bit of sexiness. Tom Taylor and company are absolutely slaying Detective Comics right now. They continue here with their third issue. Then we got Batman The Long Halloween, The Last Halloween, issue number 4. This is the Christmas issue, which is very appropriate, especially since it's out the week of Christmas. This is a follow-up to, of course, Batman The Long Halloween, Batman Dark Victory. It's the next step. Batman and Robin are solidifying their dynamic together, but Batman's kind of like in a rough spot and near death right here, so Alfred's got to work on Batman. And then Robin, it's really, most of this story is from his perspective and his fear of losing Batman so early into his crime-fighting career. It's absolutely great. Solomon Grundy-centric. A really great ending to set up the next issue. And of course, each of these, since Tim Sale is unfortunately no longer with us, each issue of The Last Halloween is done by a different artist. Here is Cliff Chiang. Cliff Chiang does an amazing job with this book of showing the drama and the emotion of Dick Grayson, like, really concerned for Bruce and what's going to happen to him, and having the big impactful moments like Solomon Grundy just tearing ass. You got Catwoman in here. Look at that great Catwoman stuff from Cliff Chiang. I got to show you, before we wrap up here, some Solomon Grundy action, because Cliff Chiang does a great job there as well. There we go. Look at that. Fantastic work. This is a great follow-up to the legacy of Tim Sale, and I really do appreciate it. Then we got Superman here with issue number 21. Josh Williamson's been doing such a great job on the Superman title for over 20 issues now. It proves that, I mean, it goes to show that number 21's no different, right? Superwoman is there. It's Lois Lane. We have the big revelation on where her powers came from in the Superwoman special, which I thought was pretty cool. We don't really focus in on this, but it's basically Clark and Lois trying to have a nice quiet date night. And then there's all these kind of like fun and cutesy and charming little interludes put throughout. So we're deepening the mystery of this timekeeper character or whatever, that and its connection to Doomsday, and like Superman dealing with that and trying to deal with that by actually having a day of rest with his wife, right? Really cool stuff here. And Dan Mora on the artwork. Dan Mora, such a great artist. 2 issues out this week. This dude is still proving that he can do 2 issues a month of ongoing comics. And I have begged DC to put somebody like Dan Mora on Justice League, on Superman. They did both. They did both, and it's really upped the level of quality in Superman, even though Josh Williamson's already been doing a great job. Then we got Action Comics 1081. This is the final issue of the weekly Phantoms series. After this, it's no longer weekly, and I think that's good, and maybe the sales can kind of rebound a little bit, because for the last 12 weeks, Action Comics has been weekly, and the sales have been tanking a little bit. The story's decent. This does wrap up the Phantom story in a very interesting way, but I do feel like the story was stretched out just a little too thin. Just a little too many issues, right? Like, I think this could have really been told in just a 6-story arc, or a 6-issue arc, but I digress. It was still a pretty fun ride all the way through. It had its moments of inconsistency, but all in all, Mark Waid and company, Clayton Henry back on the art here, they were able to pull it together, and the Supergirl backup stories pulled itself back together, but all in all, it was just kind of an okay thing, honestly. Then you got that Mark Spears cover, which is the second part of the connecting cover that Mark did for issue 1080. By the way, I had a conversation with my buddy Mark Spears on the channel, almost 3 hours long. Go check it out. We dropped it last week. Definitely worth hearing about his origin in comics, like how he got into comics, how he became an artist, and the long journey it's taken to get to where he is right now. That's a great cover, Mark. That really is. All right, then we got Green Arrow issue number 19. It's alright. And we got Chris Condon on the book, and I know a lot of people are excited about that. He's got a lot of fans, a lot of people supporting him because of his work on like That Texas Blood. I remember liking the last issue of Green Arrow. I guess I liked this one as a decent enough, but it was alright. But honestly, it was kind of dull. Like, it just, I don't know. It like, at the end of the issue, it really starts like picking up in pace, right? And in action, right? And the coloring on the book is really cool. The artwork is fine. But like the first half of the book was kind of like muddied down by just a bunch of dialogue and just uninteresting things going on, and characters like not revealing who they are by their actions, but revealing who they are by just talking. And like, I don't know, like that one threw me kind of off. It did pull itself together at the end when it got a little bit more action oriented, but I don't know. I don't know how long I'm going to be able to keep up with this Green Arrow run. I want to keep up with it. I really, really do. Then we've got, look at this, Batman Gargoyle of Gotham, issue number 3. How long has it been since the last issue of Gargoyle of Gotham by Raphael Grampa, which is such a freaking great artist. Like, the art in this book is amazing. And you're seeing this is like a DC Black Label, Elseworlds, if you want to call it that. It's like an Elseworlds type story. You get introduced to the Joker of this world. The interpretation of the Joker, which is basically like a kid Joker, is pretty freaking gnarly. Like, honestly, it's good, it's cool, but I'm so unplugged from this story because of its lateness that as I'm reading this book, I'm like, I don't even know what the hell's going on anymore. Like, Batman's captured, I don't remember that. It's, how long has it been since the last issue? So this is definitely something that is going to be worth it just for the art alone. But as far as the story goes, we're going to have to wait till this thing is wrapped up. And I think there's only, is this only meant to be 4 issues? I think it is. I hope we get the 4th issue sometime soon because the art is so good. Story may not be necessarily worth the wait, but this issue's got some really cool stuff, especially this new interpretation of the Joker, which I really like, but I'm unplugged from the story because of how late it has been. Then we got Green Lantern Dark, issue number 2. This is an Elseworlds tale. It's set in the DC Tangent universe. If you remember the Tangent universe, this is the Green Lantern from that. There's all the other heroes have died. Green Lantern's like the only one left, but she's like a hard drinker, doesn't want to like face up to things, but still is a hero at heart. And there are these monsters out that come out during the darkness, right? And she's the light, and a lot of the issue is kind of her like just being in misery, just being miserable and having to be convinced to kind of be that hero again. And that kind of gets a little annoying at times, but I did like this issue much more than I liked the first issue. So it's written by Tate Bromball with artwork by Werther Dell'Edera. That is, of course, the artist of Something is Killing the Children. Lots of Something is Killing the Children vibes here, especially since Tate, the writer, does work with James Tynion often, especially on the Oddly Pedestrian Life of Christopher Chaos. I love the art, I love the coloring, and I'm starting to get more into the vibe of the flow of these characters and this story by issue number 2. So I wasn't sold on issue number 1, but issue number 2 pulled it back around for me. Thought that was pretty cool. Over at Marvel, we got Timeslide. It's a one-shot comic. Marvel does this at the end of every year for the last few years, where they put out a book, Timeless, Timeslide, Marvel, whatever. They just put out something that's just like a one-shot story that's kind of... It doesn't really affect too much, honestly, but within the story, part of the framing device is traveling through time, traveling through dimensions, so you're able to see glimpses of what's to come in Marvel in 2025. So you got that here. Now, a lot of people are going to be interested in that. The story itself's pretty decent. It's Bishop and it's Cable on a time-windy team-up that's kind of like... It's kind of pulling from, of course, the Hope Cable run where Bishop like went crazy and tried to kill Hope and Cable across all these timelines and all that kind of stuff. So it's playing with that, but it's also kind of following up to some of the ideas in the Children of the Vault series from last year that was actually pretty solid, written by Dennis Camp, who's now killing it on books like Ultimates. I would have liked it if Dennis Camp would have written this one. I think it would have had a little bit more oomph to it, but it was decent enough. As far as those tidbits of information you get about Marvel in 2025, like, they're so minuscule and unimportant in this book, and it's just really just them telling you, here's our stories that we're doing. Get excited, Marvel. I mean, it's all right. It wasn't that bad. In fact, out of all of these year-end, timeless, time-slidey type things, this has been one of the better ones because less of a focus was put on that, and more of the focus was just on following up this journey of the conflict in the relationship between Cable and Bishop. So I thought that was pretty cool. Then we got Sabretooth, The Dead Don't Talk, issue number 1. I knew there was a new Sabretooth book coming out. I didn't really know much about it. It's written by Frank Thierry, and it was pretty solid, to be honest with you. It's what it is it's Wolverine's at a bar, and he sees a picture of Victor, of Sabretooth, from back in, like, I don't know, the 1920s, 1930s or something, and he was part of the Gangs of New York era, right? You know, like the Martin Scorsese film. And so what it does is it flashes back and it tells you that story. It tells you the story of Victor Creed back in New York, part of the Gangs of New York, back in the early 20th century. And it wasn't bad. It was fine. It was decent. It wasn't boring. It wasn't dull. It wasn't groundbreaking. It wasn't like magnificent or anything, but it was actually pretty freaking solid. Speaking of solid but not magnificent, Hellhunters issue number 1. So this is kind of a spin out of sorts of Ghost Rider and the Ghost Rider Wolverine Weapons of Vengeance, Daken, Hellverine type stuff where there's these demons that possess other people. So, like, we can't just have a Ghost Rider now. We gotta have another version of Ghost Rider. And we can't just have another version of Ghost Rider. We gotta have, like, the military involved and all this kind of stuff, right? So, it's interesting enough. There's, like, a demon that takes over, like, some Nazi soldiers. And so now there's a different Ghost Rider back in World War II. And he's gonna be teaming up with characters like Wolverine and the Winter Soldier. And you see Nick Fury. Nick Fury's in this issue. Wolverine and the Winter Soldier are not. It was all right. The art's pretty solid by, I think it's Adam Gorham. Yep. Adam Gorham, Philip Kennedy Johnson. It's decent enough. It wasn't boring. It wasn't boring, but it wasn't exciting. It wasn't magnificent, but it wasn't bad. Like, I liked it. I thought it was decent enough. And then we got Kidpool, Spider-Boy. This is a one-shot crossover by Christopher Yost and a bunch of different artists. It's Kid Deadpool and Spider-Boy. and I didn't like it. I didn't like it. I wasn't expecting to like it, but I tried to go into it with an open mind, and this was a struggle read. This was hard for me to get through, but I made it through it, and I'm here to tell you that I know you're probably going to buy this book. A lot of people are going to buy this book, I guess. Is it a first appearance of Kidpool? Has Kidpool been introduced before? I don't know. I'm going to tell you this, though. Book ain't worth it. It's not that good. There you go. Then we got Amazing Spider-Man 64, continuing the 8 Deaths of Spider-Man. I've already been slightly disappointed that Joe Kelly is having another writer come in, Justina Ireland. Now, she was writing the last issue, and I didn't really like the last issue. You also have Gleb McKelloff here on the art, but it's some of the best work I've seen from Gleb. We were talking about that actually recently on Ink and Insights. This issue was an improvement from the last one. I liked the first part of this story. I liked the second part. I didn't like the third part. The fourth part kind of pulls it back in for me just a little bit, but it doesn't feel like it does have the weight and the gravity that this story wants us to feel that it has. But that being said, we're halfway through, but we do got some Point BS issues coming up, so I'm not off of Amazing Spider-Man yet. So 4 issues into this new story, and they still got me hooked in a little bit. Then we got Moon Knight Fist of Khonshu, issue number 3. This is another solid issue of Moon Knight. Jed McKay's been doing a really great job. Now, we do have a different artist here. It's Domenico Carboni, and the art's actually decent. It's a different style that we're used to in this book, but it works. It still has that energy. It's got more of a solid line to it, though, that I do kind of like with that Moon Knight right there. But shit's really hitting the fan for the Midnight Mission and the world of Moon Knight, and we're 3 issues into this new series, and it is ramping up like crazy, so I'm continuing to enjoy it. It's not super groundbreaking, but it's pretty much continuing the whole vibe that Jed McKay has already set up for that book. And then we got X-Men number 9. This is the third part of the crossover with X-Men and Uncanny X-Men. I like the issue. I like the way the story revealed itself. I thought it did a really great job of balancing the Uncanny team and the X-Men proper team and having them at odds while on the same mission, because they're trying to save mutants from this mutant prison that's in their old X-Mansion, right? But like Cyclops and Rogue are not seeing eye to eye about how it should be done, and Cyclops like, you shouldn't be here, and there's all these kind of like inner fights amongst them. But at the same time, first of all, that's silly. They should be working together to save mutants, so that's a little, that is a little annoying. But I don't know, it's not that annoying while you're reading the book. It's pretty decent. The annoying thing when you're reading the book is that through most of the issue, you have Federico Vincentini doing the artwork. And even though it's different than the usual artist on this book, Ryan Stegman, it's got a great flow to it. It was getting the job done. And then all of a sudden, Stegman shows back up, and it feels like the most rushed and lazy Stegman work I've seen in a long time. That's been one of my problems with the X-Men book right now, is how inconsistent this art has been. And it just feels like the art is always rushed. Right? So, I don't know. Aside from maybe some artistic solidification that could happen, X-Men's been decent, but it hasn't really completely won me over yet. Then we got Exceptional X-Men, issue number 4. This is the Kitty Pryde-centric book where she is now training a new generation of mutants. For the first 3 issues, I could see that there were some cracks in the armor, there were some flaws in the story, and even in some of the characterizations, but for the most part, the book was charming enough to pull me through it. Issue number 4, though, all that's out the window. I didn't like it. I didn't like it at all. I found this one to be a little bit of a struggle read, too, and it might be my last issue of Exceptional X-Men. I'm trying to commit to reading X-Men books, because I know a lot of people out there think that I hate Marvel or that I'm a Marvel hater or something like that, right? That's not the case. I love Marvel characters. I want Marvel Comics to succeed. I want to be able to follow books like Amazing Spider-Man and the X-Men stuff. But I gotta call it as I see it when I read it, and Exceptional X-Men is exceptionally not the way to go. At least for me. I don't know. If issue 5 comes out on a light week, maybe I'll jump back in. But as it stands, I'm pretty much out of this book. Then we got Mystique here with issue number 3. Declan Shalvey writing and drawing. That's going to keep me entertained just on its own, right? Plus, it's a really cool spy story involving Nick Fury Jr. and Mystique. Mystique is on a mission. We don't really fully know everything about this mission, but it has a great sense of energy and action to it. And Declan Shalvey brings in the characters from the Sentinels book by Alex Packnadel. I thought that was a nice touch. I think the coloring on the book is great. She's after Fabian Cortez for some kind of reason, and we had Declan on the show not too long ago, and he was talking about one of the reasons why it was really exciting for him to do a Mystique story was that he was able to draw all the characters that he wants to draw, including Magneto. There's some really great moments in this book, especially with Fabian's effect on Mystique's powers. I thought it was cool. It's not game-changing, but it's a pretty solid comic that I think only has a couple issues left. And then we got Blade, issue number 3 here. I've been really digging what Brian Hill has been doing on the character of Blade and in this book. But this was the weakest issue so far. Like, first of all, the art's just not quite for me. It's okay. There's this new villain. Blade's got to go against it. The book has this sense of imbalance about it where it's really heavy on one part in the beginning and then it gets back into some Blade action in the second half. And it reads okay, and the ending is pretty gnarly. In fact, there's one page in here that's pretty gnarly. This is a Red Band book, polybagged, and they actually go for the Red Band nature of this book in issue number 3, and I appreciate that. But I'm finding myself to be slightly disconnected from the story. I think one of the biggest problems with Hill's Blade book is that it's been uprooted by things. Like, it got interrupted by Blood Hunt. Now we're trying to do a finale to Blood Hunt, but Blood Hunt feels like forever ago now at this point. I just want Blade to be Blade and Blade be badass. And there are elements of it here, but it's just not quite pulling it all together for me. And then we've got Ultimate Black Panther here with issue number 11. Just so you know, that character right there on the cover, who appeared, I believe, in the last issue, doesn't appear in this issue. Just so you know. I've been loving Ultimate Black Panther, though. It has a very deliberate sense of pace to it. A lot of people think this book has a slow burn, and it does, kind of. But I would also argue that Ultimate Spider-Man and Ultimate X-Men have a slow burn, too. I think it's kind of the Hickman influence on the Ultimate world. Each Ultimate book takes place in real time, month to month, and we're in the midst of this months-long war between the armies of the Moon Knight and Wakanda. And I really feel like the weight on T'Challa is represented very well under the writing of Brian Hill. The artwork's pretty solid. I like the story, and it's really setting up a really exciting finale for the second arc with issue number 12, and I'm all here for it. Though, it is a little bit of a slow burn to some people, but I think it is worth the wait. For real, I love the sense of deliberate pace that this book has. Let's jump over to Image Comics. And from Image Comics, we have Dust to Dust, issue number 1, a new miniseries from J.G. Jones and Phil Brom. Phil Brom and J.G. Jones are writing this book, but J.G. Jones is doing a wonderful job illustrating it. The artwork is gorgeous. It has this like sepia tone because it's set in Oklahoma during the Dust Bowl era, right? So it's about this like farmer family who's like leaving to go to California. They work on this farm. They're trying to dig for water at the behest of this guy who like owns a bunch of farms, but they leave, and then it's about the sheriff of this town. It's interesting. It's cool, but there was nothing super hooky about the story. Like, nothing really grabbed your attention to make it stand out aside from the art. So the story was good and it was solid, but it didn't in this world of comics where there's like new issue number 1s everywhere, you really got to stand out. Now maybe the art is enough for you. The art was absolutely great in this book, and the story and the characters were decent enough too. It's a good enough setup, but I really needed something more for issue number 1 to really pique my interest in this book going forward. That being said, J.G. Jones' artwork is enough for now. We'll see what happens in issue number 2. But in issue number 2, that's going to be very important for J.G. and Phil to really hook in the reader. So if it doesn't happen in issue number 2, I don't know. But the art was great, the story was decent, and it's a pretty solid book. So there you go. All right. Then we got Void Rivals, issue number 15. Yo, we got Hot Rod, we got Springer, we got Pythonia, we got like all that Cobra Law stuff. It's really coming in to the Void Rivals world right now, right? Like Void Rivals was cool, and then I loved how Void Rival kind of took its identity, and even though it's part of this Energon universe, this shared universe with Transformers and G.I. Joe, it really set itself up to be something different and unique within that world, and then really showed us the importance of Void Rivals within this world. And now that we've seen the identity of the book be separate and unique, and now that we've seen the importance of this book to the Energon universe, now we're just going full on ham. We got Hot Rod, we got Springer, we got Cobra Law. In the midst of all of that, we still got a really exciting, intriguing story about two warring races of aliens who really shouldn't be warring, but their war is based on a lie. Really cool stuff here. I loved everything about this book. Really exciting stuff. Great artwork. It continues to shine. The Energon universe continues to be a standout, especially in 2024. Then we got Geiger here with issue number 9. So I thought the last issue of Geiger was the weakest of the series so far. I just felt like the part of that story was a bit trite and silly, but the way that that story wraps up here in issue number 9 was freaking awesome. It gets big. It gets tragic. It gets important. I really like this book. Now we got Paul Pelletier doing the art. Now, obviously, this isn't Gary Frank, but Gary Frank does come in at the end with a lot of cool little like snippets to set up what's to come in the world of Geiger. But man, this big confrontation here, the way that they set up the story in the first one, in issue number 8, I didn't like as much. But the way they wrap it up here at issue number 9 was really good. And this is some really solid comic book making that Jeff Johns and company are doing, not just in Ghost Machine, but in particular in Geiger. But also Redcoat. This is a really great issue of Redcoat as well. And Redcoat is going to get the smell of the week. There's something slightly citrusy and fruity about the smell of this one, but the book itself is really cool. It goes into some dark territories. It's telling us a nice self-contained story of the Redcoat that's kind of horrific. It's kind of horror driven, and I really appreciate that. Also, you got Brian Hitch still just killing it on this book. The art is dynamic, the story was great, and just like Geiger before it, it sets up some stuff at the end that's very intriguing when we see how that's going to come to fruition in 2025. So Ghost Machine, especially the 2 books released this week that are part of the Unnamed Universe, not only do a great job of just getting the job done, but also setting up some really exciting stories for 2025. Also from Ghost Machine, but not part of the Unnamed Universe, we have Hornsby and Halo issue number 2. I enjoyed issue number 1. I enjoyed issue number 2 a little bit less. This one didn't wow me as much as the first one. Now, I think Peter J. Tomasi, the writer, is doing a decent enough job. When I described issue number 1, I said it's kind of like got that New Gods flavor, right? Like the whole idea of the New Gods being like that there was this pact that was made, and Darkseid's son was raised on New Genesis, and Highfather's son was raised on Apocalypse. She kind of got that vibe going, where there's an angel who was sent to a really shitty family, and then a demon who's sent to a really good family, nurture versus nature, that kind of thing. And then I heard a bunch of people saying, oh, so it's just like New Gods. No, it's not like New Gods, and it's more of a kid-friendly type book, but issue number 2 just didn't really pull it together enough for me. Now, so I do want to say that it does have a very more distinct difference between it than the New Gods book. That's not what it's trying to do, but it was to me, it was a good comparison because of the whole pact thing or whatever. But it's that nurture versus nature. What happens to a demon who's raised by a really great family? What happens to an angel raised by a really shitty family? What happens when they discover their heritage and their powers, and they have to make these decisions for themselves? That's what we're dealing with here a little bit, but issue number 2 for me took a little bit of a step down in exhilaration and momentum. So there you go. Then we got Violator here with issue number 4. It's a pretty silly issue of Violator. The art in this one, because each issue has a different artist. This is, oh man, Gianrico Bonacorsi. The art's pretty solid. I like the art for the most part. Let me just tell you what this issue is. This issue is Violator wearing the skin of Rasputin. So Violator is Rasputin, and he's using Rasputin basically as an excuse to have a lot of sex. So there's some sexy bits in this book. Rasputin apparently likes to have sex, and apparently so does the Violator. And that's what's going on in this book, if you know what I'm saying. But I like the story. It was silly. And this whole Violator series has been kind of silly, but I kind of appreciate it for that. And even though it's like extra sized, it was a very quick read, but at the same time, it was kind of a fun read, and it was a funny read. So I liked it. Also, that David Mack cover right there. Yeah, that's getting the cover of the week. So the last cover of the week for the year is Violator, issue number 4 by David Mack. I absolutely love that cover. All right, let's jump over to Dynamite. Dynamite's only releasing one book this week, and it's the Vampirella Holiday 2024 special. This is written by Frank Thierry with artwork by Mariano Benitez Chapo and Pasquale Colano. I had a lot of fun with this book. This is about a vampire Santa Claus that Vampirella has to come and take out. It's pretty ridiculous. It's pretty silly. There's even a reference to the Burleys, the snowman and Rudolph, the red-nosed reindeer. I liked it. Vampirella gets hired by Mrs. Claus and Head Elf to take out a vampire Santa Claus. I liked it. I liked the book a lot. It was just silly enough, just charming enough. It was fun enough. And that cover by Jay Lee was great. I loved it. Could have been the cover of the week, but then David Mack blew us away with that. Also, from last week, because Diamond's been all screwy, these are some of the Dynamite books that came out last week that we haven't really talked about. Thundercats number 11. This is the start of the 3rd arc by writer Declan Shalvey. Drew Moss is back on the artwork, and this is Lion-O going directly after Mumra. He's tired of all the setup. He's tired of all the build. Let's get into it. Let's go. Lion-O versus Mumra. That's what happens here, and I'm loving it. I think Thundercats is really good. It hit really hard. I feel like interest in this book is waning a little bit, but I think if you stick with it, especially here at issue number 11 and the Thundercats Apex book that Ed Brisson did, I think there's some excitement to be reignited in the world of Thundercats coming soon. Thundercats number 11 was great. Johnny Quest issue number 5, the final issue of the series for now by Joe Casey and Sebastian Perez. They will be back because it's already been announced that they're doing Space Quest, which is a crossover between Space Ghost and Johnny Quest. But this wraps up the time travel story pretty freaking well. The whole jive of this book has been Johnny Quest and his family coming into today's world, going up against, or not going up against, but coming to have a team up with old man Johnny Quest. And I love the ending of this book. Joe Casey, you can feel the passion he has for this project. You can also feel and see that he knows how to write a comic book, and he knows how to write a finale and set up what's to come. Johnny Quest was great. Also last week we had DuckTales number 2, DuckTales, a woohoo, by Brandon Montclair. This was a really fun issue about the importance of cinema to Uncle Scrooge. I really liked it, and of course you do still have a bit that's kind of a throwback to like Carl Barks Duck comics and stuff like that. But I really liked it. This is a DuckTales comic about the magic of cinema, and I'm all here for that. So there you go. All right. And then we got this book. It's from BlackBox Comics. Katabasis. I don't know how I'm supposed to say this, but I will tell you that this book was awesome. This is one of the best BlackBox comics I've read in a very long time. It was exciting to me, right? It's about this woman who is sent on a mission to save this, like, weapon of mass destruction that turns out to be a little girl. The little girl gets killed. All of a sudden now this woman has ultra powers. She's this like badass vigilante who's like going up against like the forces of heaven and hell and everything in between. Sounds a little Spawn-y, but it doesn't have the vibe of a Spawn book. It has its own kind of vibe. The art in this book was absolutely amazing, and there is a twist towards the end that I found very intriguing. So this is one of the best black box comics I've read. Katabasis. This book was awesome. Demetrius, like, like, how do you say that? I don't know. All right, from Fantagraphics, we got a new one called Damned, issue number 1. It's $6.99 comic. It's definitely not going to be for everybody, but it was definitely for me. If you like weird, quirky, alternative, underground comics, check this book out. If you like books like Love and Rockets, if you like 8 Ball, if you like Hate, yeah. If you like the greatest hits of Fantagraphics in the 80s and 90s, check this book out. Do yourself a favor. It is so weird, so surreal. It's about this woman. She's been having these dreams, and in these dreams, she is like Deathika, and she's like fighting this army of weird head freaking, what are those things called? Those like early fossils? I don't remember what they're called. This book is weird, man. I love it. It's so quirky. If you like the work of Benjamin Marra, if you like that kind of stuff, definitely check out this book. It's so delightfully indie. It's so ridiculously weird. Plus, you got this one dude who's just obsessed with ham and ham sandwiches. I'm telling y'all, this book, I think at this point, you know if this book is for you, right? Like, if you just want run-of-the-mill mainstream superhero comics and stuff like that, stay away from this. If you just want good mainstream indie comics, you know, they're like easy to digest, get it, that's fine. But if you want something different, if you want something weird, if you want something absurd, if you want something ridiculous, check out Damned, number 1 from Fantagraphics. I had so much fun with this book. I absolutely adored it. Nick from Comic Culture, I really can't wait to hear what you think about that book. Hopefully we'll talk about it Friday night on the monthly comic book review. All right, from American Mythology, we got Return of the Living Dead, issue number 1, with a beautiful cover by Mark Spears. At the conversation I had with my homie Mark, he mentioned that he did these covers just out of a love for Return of the Living Dead, which is one of my favorite movies as well. So I was really excited to pick this up, and Mark's got a cover on all 3 of these issues. The book itself is okay. It's basically just a reskinned plot from the original Return of the Living Dead, but instead of a mortuary and a graveyard and like a medical supply company, it's set at a theme park. It's about these kids that like hide out at the theme park on an island, and they're just there to like skateboard and stuff. It's set in the 80s. The art is okay. The art's got a nice sense of like energy to it, but it doesn't, I don't know. I think this book needed something different. It needed less cartoonish artwork, in my opinion. And the story's all right, but like I said, it's just a reskinned retelling of Return of the Living Dead, but in a different setting with different characters. But at the end, they do release all the zombie stuff, and it gets a little bit more exciting there. I'm going to pick up every issue because I support my boy Mark. I love that cover. Will I read every issue, though? I don't know. We'll see what happens. It was intriguing enough, but this book is not going to blow you away story-wise. But if you're the most hardcore Return of the Living Dead fan or Mark Spears fan, definitely worth checking out. Last week at Boom, we had Vicarious issue number 3. I didn't get a chance to read it until this week because Diamond's being screwy. But it was good. I like it. It's really taking this story and deepening it and taking this concept and like moving into different directions that are kind of unexpected, but at the same time expected. So it's still engaging, it's still intriguing enough, and the artwork's pretty solid. And I think it's an interesting exploration on exploitation. I really do like Vicarious. This is a world in which people can pay to basically go into your head and experience what you experience, and so they tell you what to experience, right? But there's a lot of new ideas that are being pushed forward in each issue of this series, and I think issue number 3 was pretty solid. From Boom New this week, we got Uncanny Valley issue number 7, written by Tony Fleece with Dave Wachter on the artwork. Our main character disappeared in the last issue. He reappears here, redrawn now in the cartoon world, so our main character gets to go into the cartoon world. Really great, solid stuff. I'm enjoying the hell out of this book. I'm glad that Tony was able to let this book breathe a little bit and not just have to like wrap everything up in 4 or 5 issues. I think this book is going for 10. I'm pretty certain, but I'm really digging it because even though, and it's about this kid who's half cartoon, half human, and he's got the powers of both, and he's like the chosen one because of it. A lot of those kind of stories get into tropey, familiar territory. Tony plays around with that here, but at the same time does his own thing with it that is such an honor, and it's respecting the legacy of cartoons and animation, and I really appreciate it for that. Plus Dave Wachter does a great job of doing realistic art for the real world and cartoonish flat art for the cartoon world. It's really freaking good, and I think it's one of the most underappreciated comics on shelves today. All right, last week from Titan Comics, we had The Savage Sword of Conan, issue number 6. I loved it. It wraps up the Jason Aaron story that I really, really liked. Who was the artist on the Jason Aaron story? It was Jeff Isherwood. I like this story. It's like Conan, like in the first part, like Conan's like, it's kind of like really dealing with Conan and his sense of like religion and, oh man, maybe that should have got the smell of the week. Unfortunately, it came out last week. Conan and his thoughts on like religion and God and spirituality and stuff like that, but also this whole dichotomy of like, are all witches bad? Conan's got this idea that they are, but he comes to find out that that's not necessarily the case. I liked the story. I thought it was pretty solid. Then there is a little short story in there that I really enjoyed and thought was cool. Then there's a Dark Agnes story that I liked by Michael Downs, Piotr Kowalski on the art. It was super cool to see Kowalski's artwork in black and white. And we haven't really read Dark Agnes aside from like the recent Black Stone crossover, but I really love the art, thought it was good. And Savage Sword of Conan's been one of my favorite books of the year. Also, if you're waiting for that video, I plan on working on it this weekend. So before 2025, at some point next week, you are going to get my top 20 comics of 2024. I have not gotten to start working on it yet. Things have been busy, things have been hectic, but that is definitely the plan to work on that this weekend and get that ready for y'all. And Savage Sword of Conan might be on that list. What are your favorite comics of the year? Let me know in the comments down below. So let's recap real quick. Savage Sword of Conan came out last week. It was great. Uncanny Valley this week, and it was awesome. Vicarious last week, which continues to develop that story in a splendid fashion. Return of the Living Dead is not going to do much for you, but a great cover. Just a cool return to that world. Damned, number 1. If you want something different, you want something weird, definitely read this book. Let's cause it to sell out and get reprinted. Katabasis is what I'm going to say. I'm going to say Katabasis. This is really good. One of the best black box comics I've read. DuckTales, woohoo, really good stuff. Johnny Quest wraps up in spectacular fashion. Thundercats really moving the story forward. The Vampirella Holiday Special had a lot of charm and fun to it. Violator gets the cover of the week in a silly Violator as Rasputin book. Hornsby and Halo dropped off for me a little bit, but Redcoat and Geiger was awesome, and Redcoat gets the smell of the week. Void Rivals, Energon Universe, I'm loving every single bit of it. Dust to Dust, great art, but it needed something more to the story. We'll see if it delivers that in issue number 2. Ultimate Black Panther has a deliberate pace to it, which I absolutely love. Blade was a little bit losing me here. I feel like that story's too rushed. Mystique, though, I love Declan Shalvey's clean line work and his use of action and motion, so I love that. Exceptional X-Men is losing me. X-Men inconsistency in the art, but the story's still pretty solid. Moon Knight Fist of Khonshu, a new artist arrives. It's solid. The book continues to maintain. Amazing Spider-Man was better than the last issue, but it wasn't as good as the first 2 issues of this 8 Deaths of Spider-Man. Kidpool and Spider-Boy doesn't need me to tell you that it's good for people to buy it, because people are going to buy this book anyway. I'm going to tell you that it sucks. So there you go. Hellhunters was alright. It was cool, as was Sabretooth, The Dead Don't Talk. These are 2 Marvel books that are not groundbreaking or magnificent, but they're pretty solid and they're not boring. Timeslide was one of the best of these timeless, time-slidey type books. I really enjoy Cable and Bishop, and I thought this was a decent enough story. It was alright. Green Lantern Dark I thought was an improvement on the first issue. Batman, Gargoyle of Gotham. Really cool stuff here. Amazing artwork. I'm lost in the story because of the really excessive delays. Green Arrow didn't really do it for me. Action Comics wraps up the weekly Phantom story. I'm glad that story is wrapped up because I feel like it went on a little bit too long. Superman, though, date night with Lois and Clark and Josh Williamson and Dan Mora tagging along, but not in an odd, awkward way. Then we got Batman, The Long Halloween, Last Halloween by Cliff Chang on the artwork this time. Really great, solid issue there. Detective Comics was amazing. Justice League Unlimited was top-notch. Metamorpho was interesting. I actually liked it. Silly Silver Age fun. But Absolute Wonder Woman absolutely gets the pick of the week. One of my favorite comics of the year. Only 3 issues in. Will it make the list? I don't know. Top 20 comics of 2024. Drop in Monday morning. I'll commit to Monday morning. I think it will be ready by Monday morning. Anyway, thank you all so much for checking out the video. Thank you for watching. I hope you've had a great holiday season. I hope you have a continuously great holiday season as we're now in Hanukkah and approaching the new year. So, happy holidays, Station. Thank you for watching. And y'all, seriously, thank you for watching this show. Not just for this year, but for all the years. Like, we've done like 8 years of the weekly comic book review. And in fact, we're about to hit the 10th anniversary of Pop Culture Philosophers, period. So thank you so much for watching this channel. Thank you for allowing me to do this. Like, I don't get to do this without you. So thank you. I really do appreciate it. And thank you for all the kind words. Thank you for all the hate, all the haters out there that want to tell me that I'm doing stuff wrong. I appreciate that too. I love all of you. I really do. And I hope that you receive as much love and hate in your life as I do. Because we need that balance, right? Does that make sense? Anyway, seriously, PCP Army, you out there, y'all are the best. I love you so much. So, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy New Year, Happy Comic Book Day. Station, keep on reading. Pop, pop. Seriously, y'all, love you. Boom!